Okay, good evening, everyone. My presentation is called The Creative Bone, which should become self-explanatory, I hope, as we go. If it doesn't, then I haven't done a very good job. Can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. Okay, so my daughter, who will be 16 in 2 weeks' time, has always been a very challenging child in the best possible way. She challenges everyone she meets, whether in real or cyberspace, on matters of all kinds, but she saves the toughest tests for me. She lets me get away with nothing and generally as I was about to read her bedtime story. On one such evening, some 8 years ago, she opened with, "So, Daddy, this logotherapy thing that you go to Joburg to learn, what's it all about?" Well, having just started my studies and hoping to keep the conversation simple, I responded, "Well, it's about finding meaning and purpose in life." That sounds interesting. And who invented logotherapy? A man by the name of Viktor Frankl. That's a funny name. And where did he live? In Austria. That's far. And when did he invent logotherapy? Oh, about 90 years ago in the 1930s. So she said, before 90 years ago, there was no meaning and purpose. And after that, only for people in Austria. At this point, I realized I'd better settle in for one of our longer conversations and put aside the storybook from which I had planned to read. Well, no, not really. So then how did people know about stuff like meaning and purpose before logotherapy was invented? I mean, especially cavemen who were like a very long time ago. I grappled for a moment and my eye fell on the storybook. Well, they learned about meaning and purpose through stories. But cavemen couldn't read or write. You're absolutely correct, they couldn't. But they shared stories. You mean like they sat around fires and stuff for stories? Well, that came a little bit later. We call that oral tradition. Or they acted them out, like you've seen in the theater. But they didn't have theaters, Daddy. No stages or scenery or lights or costumes. Right again, they didn't. But theater doesn't need all those things. All it takes for theater to happen is a space and two people, one to tell the story and one to watch and listen to it. So theater has always been there, just like stories. Well, certainly ever since we evolved sufficiently to be able to think creatively and imaginatively, yes. Okay, but I still don't get how cave people knew about meaning and purpose through stories and theater. Well, perhaps they didn't know about them consciously, but think about the rock paintings you've seen up here on our mountain. We're very fortunate to live on the slopes of a mountain where there are some beautiful rock paintings. They were made by people who lived much later than the cave people, but they still live ago. These paintings show. Well, she said, one I can remember shows a man killing a huge animal with a spear. Right. So that man would probably have been a dad, right? And the huge animal, the food he was hunting for his family. And once he got back to their cave and after the family had eaten some of the animal he had hunted, maybe the dad told the mom and children a story about his hunt. Trample him to death before he managed to kill it. She's always had a taste for the gory. Exactly. Great story to share. But did he allow that danger to make him scared and run away from the hunt? No, he had to carry on even though he may have been hurt and be brave so his family could eat. Yes. So he was fulfilling a purpose, right? He faced challenges like fear and physical pain, but he had to overcome those because he knew he had to take on the responsibility to fulfill his purpose by doing what gave his life meaning, providing for his family. And because he did that, and after the mom and kids listened to the story, the dad was their hero. Oh, good thought, which might have inspired them to want to live heroically too, even if it was difficult, right? And is that what you are learning to do, Daddy? Teach people to live like a hero, even if it's hard? Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but pretty much so, yes. She thought deeply for a few seconds. How so? Well, he didn't invent logotherapy. It's always been there because of stories and theater. I share this anecdote not because it contains any earth-shattering revelations, cognizant on a simple level of the fact that we as human beings have everything we require within us to live meaning and purposeful lives. Inside our noetic dimension exists that wonderful fountain of all that connects us with ourselves, others, life, the universe, and our unconscious and or conscious God, our imagination. An imagination which is capable of supplying us infinitely with all we need in order to live creatively. But that fountain, as we grow into adulthood, maturity, and wisdom, recedes ever further and further from our reach. It never dries up. It's always there. It always exists. But our access to it becomes blocked by the lies we are told, the wrong choices we make in believing those lies, and by the very process of living, which is in fact not living at all. And most of us arrive very early on at a point in our development at which imagination and creativity are relegated to the lowest rung on our life skills ladder, while we get on with the real business of life. And the more we get on with getting on, the denser the to pay other people who are equally unaware of their fountains. And if someone happens to suggest that we should rather look within to our imaginative, creative selves, our response, unless we consider ourselves to be artistic in some way, is a scoffing or dismissive, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I don't have a creative bone in my body. Of all the lies we tell ourselves about ourselves, this is one of the greatest. Of course, if we were to be pedantic, it would be the truth, because obviously a bone cannot be creative. But because we are naturally imaginative, we accept that the bone is a metaphor for the creative spirit, even in the very moment of denying possessing so much as an ounce of creativity. And in that moment, we're not lying. We believe utterly that it's the truth because we cannot feel it. The access to that fountain of creativity is so densely blocked that we have completely forgotten it exists within us, buried under all the getting on with life we are so busy with. And by what I believe to be one of the greatest illnesses of our current millennium, which I'm calling overwhelmedness. I don't even know if it's a word. Overwhelmedness. In my practice, I hear one phrase more than any other at the moment. I'm feeling totally overwhelmed. And this is hardly surprising. Never before have we been faced with so many choices on multiple levels. In the fast-paced landscape of the 2010s, we are consistently bombarded by a barrage of visual and oral stimuli. The rapid advancement of technology has led to a constant influx of information overload, blurring the boundaries between work and personal life, as well as of spirit. 6 months ago, most of us had barely registered AI, other than in the context of science fiction. Now we're hearing on an almost daily basis of real jobs held down by real people which are being taken over by machines, which can replicate and even surpass our practical functionality. Social media platforms, while offering connectivity, cause constant comparisons between our own lives and those of others, leading to feelings of inadequacy and envy. The pressure to stay informed, succeed professionally, and maintain a fulfilling personal life create perfect storms of stress and anxiety. And paradoxically, the spiritual tools which would provide relief from this stress and anxiety become increasingly inaccessible as access to the noetic dimension where the tools of healing reside is blocked by the very conditions for which we require that healing. And so the vicious cycle is created. How do we break this cycle? Where do we turn to release ourselves from this deadlocked way of life? Well, one possibility is for us to turn to our creative bone. But what of the so many who dismiss that bone as being non-existent within them, but do not know how to access it? or who are simply, through lack of practice, too uncertain or even scared to approach it for what it has to offer. Who or what can supply the key which will unlock that seemingly impenetrable door to the place in which the solutions and answers lie? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, from William Shakespeare's As You Like It. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. From Shakespeare's Macbeth. Theatre, stories, actors, all of which have been around for thousands and thousands of years, all potential keys. So why does Shakespeare paint such a negative picture of the actor as metaphor for the human being involved in the struggles of daily life? Well, he doesn't. Because as in any great art, context is all. In the first extract, the words are those of Jacques, probably Shakespeare's most cynical of his characters, who could be described as being trapped in Viktor Frankl's existential vacuum. For Jacques, humans as a species have no freedom or will to meaning, and so he likens them to actors, merely players, whom he further reduces to puppets whose strings are manipulated only by fate and never controlled by choice. In the second extract, Macbeth reduces humanity to poor players who are granted a brief, meaningless moment on the stages of their lives before fading into oblivion. But Macbeth is a man who has sacrificed his will to meaning on the altar of vaulting ambition, turned his back on his unique calling and responsibility to meaning and purpose in favor of a meaningless, fleeting moment of abused and abusive power. At the beginning of the play, as a man of honor and integrity, he would have been more likely to describe humanity in the vein of another of Shakespeare's great characters, Hamlet, who says, "What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god." That same Hamlet, who advises a troupe of actors to suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance, that you overstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature. What Shakespeare is saying is that a human being, if they live responsibly and meaningfully, can become almost godlike. He likens such humans to a great actor who plays their role with the goal of rising to the challenge of accepting responsibility for fulfilling their ultimate purpose, which is to hold the mirror up to nature, to be the reflections and champions of truth. Actors, as the interpreters of these stories, in their training under mentors and in their careers as performers under the guidance of directors, are on a continually transformative journey of self-discovery as they learn and develop the skills which liberate the self from tension, stress, and anxiety. This is essential for allowing intuition and instinct to take center stage in their creative expression in training, rehearsal, and performance processes. By honing techniques which enable them to break through inhibitions and be fully present in the moment, actors unlock a wellspring of authenticity and meaning that brings characters to life. These skills, honed through rigorous practice, have the potential to serve as invaluable tools for individuals not engaged in artistic pursuits, but who are seeking liberation from stress, anxiety, and overwhelmedness. Just as the actor uses tools to unlock and or unblock access to their noetic dimension, where their imagination and creativity, their creative bone, resides, so can we all, through the acquisition and development of these tools, achieve this in our daily lives. Furthermore, storytellers in the guise of writers, directors, and actors can serve as profound guides in the journey of understanding and navigating life's complexities. By delving into the intricacies of human experience, they hold up the mirror to nature, reflecting the emotions, dilemmas, and triumphs that define our existence. They offer us a lens through which to examine the uniqueness of our own lives, enabling us to connect with characters and situations that resonate with our own. As we witness characters surmount challenges, grapple with moral dilemmas, and evolve in response to their circumstances, we gain insights into the human psyche in general and our own in particular. These insights, in turn, become tools for more successful living, offering us guidance in making decisions, managing relationships, and embracing personal growth. In essence, storytellers gift us not only with narratives, but also with the wisdom to enrich our own life stories, to find meaning and purpose in the events of our unique lives. This is the essence of logotheater, a term I coined during my advanced studies, which refers to the synergies between the philosophies, principles, and techniques of logotherapy and those of acting/theater, and the potential for each to enhance the other's processes and outcomes. Logotherapeutic processes can potentially develop better, more insightful actors and directors. Acting processes have the potential to empower logotherapists to deepen their clients' journeys towards discovering meaning and purpose through ever-evolving creative and stimulating methods, as well as the development of the therapist's own vocal, emotional, observational, improvisational, and interpretive skills. The Logotheater course I have developed and will be offering through the Viktor Frankl Institute of South Africa's Community Service Center consists of an introductory session followed by 8 modules, each involving knowledge and skills transference, as well as the relevance and potential application thereof to cases introduced by both trainer and participants. In the latter part of the course, participants will receive the opportunity to work practically with a client during a session for the purpose of immediate guidance, as well as to submit a recording of a private session with one of their clients for comment, support, and feedback. Each participant will receive a copy of Athol Fugard's play, Hello and Goodbye, prior to the commencement of their course, which they will be required to have completed a close reading of before Module 5. The course may be attended online or in person, depending on the location of the participant. It is also possible to run the course with a group class of no more than 4 participants, again online or in person. It kicks off with an introduction to logotheater, which looks at its development, the ongoing research and synergies, parallels between logotherapy and theater/acting. We look at the history of theater and acting, the function of theater and how it contributes to universal meaning and purpose. We also look at how the practice of acting contributes to individual meaning and purpose through the creative, experiential, and attitudinal values. It's also about creating awareness that acting, theater, and drama have the power to elicit meaning from audiences through extending the boundaries of the intimate face-to-face counseling session to the wider world. And lastly, it involves a very important introduction to the principles of storytelling, from inciting incident to messaging and meaning. We then move on to Module 1 of the course, which I've called the Unique Encounter and the Unique Self. Firstly, it explores the unique encounter as core principle of both logotherapy and acting, and consequently logotheater. The unique self, obviously that self consisting of the physical, psychological, and spiritual noetic self, as the only instrument of artistic expression for both the director, mentor, and actor. And the unique self, again, the physical, psychological, and spiritual noetic self, as the only instrument of living and healing through the discovering of meaning and purpose for both the logotherapist and client. Module 2 of the course deals with visualization and improvisation. Visualization and improvisation as core techniques of logotheater. So we'll look at an introduction to and the development of visualization tools and skills used by actors and directors, their application to logotherapy and logotheater, and the process of transferring those techniques to clients. and then the introduction to and development of improvisational tools and skills used by actors and directors, the application to logotherapy, stroke logotheater, and the process of transferring the techniques to clients. Module 3 is around breath, breathing, and the logotherapist's voice. We look at breath and breathing as life force for which gratitude must be offered, and the source of meaning and healing for both therapist and client. And again, the process of transferring the techniques to the clients. And then very importantly, the logotherapist's own voice as core therapeutic instrument and the development thereof. Module 4 I call What If, and the doomed but necessary pursuit of perfection. And that looks at the Socratic dialogue as guide towards self-discovery and self-transcendence in acting and logotherapy stroke logotheater, and then hyper-reflection, dereflection, and paradoxical intention, the parallels between life therapy and art, acting, and theater. In Module 5, we move on to analysis of Athol Fugard, who is known as the world's greatest living playwrights, his text, Hello and Goodbye, with a view to unpacking the characters of Johnny and Hester Smith and their choices logotherapeutically through focusing on context, which is central to the discovery of meaning and purpose, dissecting subtext, which increases our skill as therapists of noetic listening, to meaning, and choices, in which we look at conscience, the tragic triad, and the neurotic triad. And finally, judgment in the theater context of fictional characters, and in life and logotherapy of the real client. Module 6, we continue looking at Hello and Goodbye, and here we look at analysis of Hester based on her thwarted will to meaning and the potential for attitude modulation, as well as invoking the defiant power of the human spirit. We then do an analysis of Johnny based on his fears, suffering, guilt, death, his addictive behavior, his meaningful choices, and his scope of free will. Module 7 is called End of Life Movies, and this is an example of creating a logo theater exercise for group therapy purposes, incorporating a more detailed analysis of the process and principles of storytelling, which includes premise, inciting incident, obligatory beats, metaphor, messaging, etc., etc. The course participants then each create a logotheater exercise of their own for an individual client or a group logotherapy situation for feedback. Module 8, the application of logotheater in an individual session. A client of the trainers is taken through a logotherapy session by the course participant, who is required to discern the moments which call for the implementation of logotheater and practice their new skills and knowledge. Comments, support, guidance, and illumination of discoveries are provided by the trainer throughout the session. The homework then is for the course participant to record a session with one of their own clients, incorporating logotheater, and submit it to the trainer for written and/or face-to-face feedback. The final session of the course I call a unique farewell to a unique encounter. So this final class is akin to a logotherapy session in that it is driven by whatever the course participant needs from or requires of the trainer. The encounter may take the form of questions and answers, revision, general conversation, a look at another session of the participants, further unraveling and exploration of new discoveries, and so on. The participant is then released from the course with the assurance and understanding that the trainer is available to them for ongoing advice and support going forward. In conclusion, if, as Dr. Frankl says, all therapy is something of an art, and Dr. Chantal says, logotherapy illuminates the art of living, we, as logotherapists, are artists who work collaboratively with our clients in order to discover the unique purpose and meaning of each. It follows then that our ongoing growth and development as therapists, counselors, and coaches must include continuous examination, exploration, and expansion of our own unique imagination and creativity, the never-ending evolvement of our creative bone. I hope through the development and application of logotheater to contribute in some measure to this process. Thank you. If anyone has any questions.
Well, let me just kick off by saying you've given a very detailed overview of what is a most magnificent project as part of Mark's final course, Logotherapy for Professionals. But the uniqueness of it, and this is the aim and goal of the very last course, is to clarify the students' unique mission in life, where they, in their own unique way, can give over the principles of logotherapy in a creative way. And Mark has established a life center in Riebeekskasteel, a town in the Cape in South Africa. Having been in theatre a large part of his life, one of the most fascinating things that Mark does there is the training of actors. And it was in this project, now why I'm just saying this is that I want you to please zoom into our next session, because I will then go into depth of the logotherapeutic onset of a creative life through acting, which is a most powerful method. Just simply said now, and I want us to talk about it in depth, and our time tonight is limited. So I want this follow-up Zoom session, but where we actually, through acting, put ourselves in the shoes of another, that we have to fine-tune ourselves to the uniqueness of this character, so much so that we open up to the other of the act of the role that the actor, the person that the actor is portraying, and that opens up the wellspring of what Mark described as the creative bone, the very essence, you know, the bone truth of our own creative fountain of life, which is, you know, deeply embedded in what Frankl called the unconscious God, the spark of the divine to break through the barriers and all the lies and the deceptions and the misperceptions, and like that Mark so eloquently described as overwhelmness, the particular plague of our times, that we're so taken up and so involved with and thrown about by so many voices and inputs that we lose our anchor of selfhood. And here is a creative way, and it's a very powerful way if you think about it. I love watching a good film that portrays in a real way the lives of people. It makes me feel that I'm coming alive, that I'm comprehending things, that I can identify with, that I can feel along with, and can have all the human feelings that can be locked up if we just go about the business of trying to make a go of life and getting, you know, the get going kind of orientation. So that's just so, and I just wanted to say that in terms of inviting you to the next Zoom session that will go into Mark's program that sounded a bit complicated in its complexity, that we can look at the essentials of what he actually does and the power of it. But okay, are there just some remarks that you want to make now? Because I actually want you all to be at the next Zoom session for an in-depth and intensive interactive discussion. Okay? Anybody?
I'd like to make a comment because I need to leave. The meaning of the moment is that my kids are here now and I have to go. And I just enjoyed your presentation so much. You know, really put everything into such. I think you epitomized the idea of telling a story. You know, when you tell a story, it sounds like it's just a story. It's not real life, but you can convey things through a story that you can't convey any other way. You know, like poetry or like, you know, it's a medium that that affects you. It hits you on a visceral level. So you know, so I think like sometimes people might act and it's like not really who they are, but then sometimes you need to act. That's just my thought that came to me. You know, you need to think you're acting in order to really portray who you are. So it's kind of you're between those places. So anyway, sorry, I gotta go.
Oh, okay, Batya, please join us next time. That was a very valuable
really will
comment
try.
that we need to go into as well. Wonderful, wonderful. Why we convey things through stories, right? That it makes it comprehensible. Like Mark said to his daughter, it made sense to her when you could tell it in a story form, not
Right.
abstract, you know, academic statements. Okay, yeah. Anybody else?
Terry, it's Sharon. Mark,
Yes,
thank you for your fantastic presentation. And what really brought to light for me is that we understand ourselves and we understand our world through stories. That's the gift of language that we have, and that when when our stories change, we change. And so that's really kind of standing out for me. And something that I was thinking about is that stories create the space of self-distance, because
Absolutely.
it's true that we can, and that's so valuable to us in our work as logotherapists, that we can step back as a character in our world, and we can become a viewer of the world, and we can see ourselves as a character in the story and in the relationships with everybody else, in all the other characters in the story, and we can start to make some decisions about what's happening here. Do we want this to continue? What do we want to keep? What do we want to change? And what is, you know, and where is this taking us in terms of what's important in our life, that what's fulfilling? Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the interesting distinction between a writer of a complete story and us as the writers of our own lives is that obviously, if I'm writing a story, I can play God. I can make all the decisions I want to about the terrible blows of fate that are going to befall those characters. In our own lives, we don't write those areas of fate. Those areas of fate are written for us, but we always have the ability, the potential then to rewrite the areas of freedom. In other words, how does the story continue after the area of fate has been written for us?
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a logotherapist, with the privilege of journeying in the story development and story creation of our clients, we also have to we have to hold that so carefully and with such humility and a sense of privilege, because we need to be very conscious about where we are as we insert ourselves into somebody's story, because just in the interaction we are becoming inserted into someone's story. And so how can we carry that responsibility with great care and with great love and compassion?
The privilege of facilitating the development of somebody's story cannot be underestimated.
Sorry, Toria. I'm sorry to interrupt everybody, but we've got 2 minutes left.
So shall we please continue this conversation with our next Zoom session, because that will just be your comments and our discussion around the topic. I'll just bring out some main features that we can then go into a real discussion about. Okay?